They didn't know where she was at. She was underneath the aircraft. So 3 hours into the accident scene, after they were able to manage to get assets into the area, I finally got triaged out to a hospital, Arkansas Heart Hospital. When I got to the hospital, they had already enacted their emergency response there. We had all major disciplines of doctors. You had a full complement of nursing staff, so forth, specialists, the whole gamut. When I actually came in the door of Arkansas Heart Hospital, I was still covered in Captain Bushman's blood and had a neck brace on. So immediately they put me in a trauma bay, started taking a look at my injuries and so forth. And one of the nurses says, "We need to call your mom." 36 years old, you know. I considered I wasn't hurt severely or anything like that, and I said, "No, you don't have to call my mom." She managed to get the number from me and immediately started dialing the number. My mom was living in Newark, New Jersey at the time. So you can imagine her surprise when she picked up the phone at 5 o'clock in the morning and heard a nurse say to her, "Mrs. McIntosh, your son's been in an airplane crash and he's doing okay." And then she handed the phone to me and I said, "Mom, don't worry about it. Don't come out. It's not that big of a deal." Okay? So 2 hours later, Mom's there. Okay? In the meantime, I'm in the triage bay and I'm just completely surrounded by nurses. And the head nurse says to me, "Mr. McIntosh, we're going to have to do a lavage." And so I'm sitting there going, wow, something French and a whole bunch of nurses. You know, it can't be bad. It can't be bad. Lavage and nurses. Sure, no problem. Head nurse comes back about 5 minutes later. She's got a syringe about that big, filled with a clear liquid, and she says, "This is," you know what they always say, "this is going to burn a little bit." Well, it had the consistency of gasoline. So she took and started irrigating that hole, which in my knee was about that big. You could see the kneecap hanging out. Okay, so she started irrigating it, and with something that looked like tongs from a salad buffet, she started sticking it in there, and she started calling out all the things that she was pulling out of that hole. Ants, bugs, grass, metal shavings, bone fragments. That was real nice of her to tell me what she was getting. So immediately, they put me in a private room. They left the wound open in case there was an infection or anything like that. Put me in a private room. And then immediately, within an hour, this nice lady walks in. She's holding a big stack of "While You Were Out," those little pink forms. "Mr. McIntosh, we have some people here to see you." I look at that stack and I said, "I don't know that many people." She goes, "Oh no, they're not friends of yours. They're people here wanting interviews." Hometown CNN's there. All the major networks. My phone is ringing off the hook. Here's my phone right here. That phone's ringing off the hook. I've got radio stations from Phoenix calling me. I've got Sky News from Europe, CNN. I mean, there's cameras all over the place getting set up. And the reason that I allowed media to come in was because while I'm sitting in my room, prior to her coming in, I turned on the TV and I'm watching CNN coverage. Well, you know what? They got every aviation expert telling everybody on TV what happened. Let me just tell you, 24 to 48 hours after an incident, they don't know what happened. Okay? It's just speculation. So as I was listening to the speculation, I'm sitting there getting more and more upset because, number one, my doctor prescribed the wrong medication. So instead of taking the shock off, he heightened it. And then I'm watching this news coverage on TV that's got it completely wrong. So when she comes in and says, hey, we got all these people from the media wanting to talk to you, I'm saying, sure, you know what? 5 minutes. We'll just go one at a time. I start telling the story of what happened, and we just do interviews. My doctor actually had to intervene after a period and say, you're going to have to give him a break. I had relatives from Europe calling because they saw me on Sky News. I had relatives from across the country calling because they saw me on TV. They heard, I was on radio. The whole ball of wax. Roughly about 80 interviews in 48 hours. Right in that area. So, you can see that pillow back there too. So basically, I'm in a private room. About an hour later, my mom shows up with my stepfather. And then I'm watching coverage still. And lo and behold, I see on one of the newscasts, if you'd like to find out the status of your relatives, call this 800 number. I'm thinking, geez, I wonder what my status is. So I'm going to call the 800 number. I call the 800 number. I get a nice American Airlines res agent. And I said, yeah, I'd like to know the status of Paul McIntosh. I think he was on that flight. And she says, well, who are you? And I said, well, I'm his brother, Mike. And then she says to me, he's unaccounted for. So, the poor girl, I decided, well, I don't know how to break this to her. But I basically said, well, you know what? Let me just tell you, I'm Paul McIntosh, and I'm calling to let you know where I'm at. That poor girl immediately put me on hold. Okay, 2 minutes later, a supervisor comes on. Where are you at? How are you doing? How badly injured are you? She gets all my information. 3 hours later, my care team shows up. Denise, and gosh, I can't remember the other girl's name because it was her first deployment. Denise was a pro. She had done the Cali-Columbia accident. Okay, if you know anything about that accident, by the time they all got up to the accident scene, all the bodies had been stripped. Okay, so Denise was a pro. She's going to have a really tough time with it. So when they get there, they come into the room, I'm in the middle of an interview, and they both wave. My mom yaks a lot. So immediately, instead of waiting around to talk to me, they asked to speak to my mother outside the room. Well, that was pretty ingenious because you know what they did then? They managed to get, my mom gave up all the goods. What sizes I wore, if I wore glasses, everything. So when we talk about that basic needs, Maslow's pyramid, these girls already had it nailed down by the first visit. They got all the information from my mom. They immediately waved to me again and left. I'm okay, big deal, it's the airlines. Okay. 3 hours later, they come back. In their hands, they're holding these big sacks. Well, I don't deny access to my room to anybody that's bringing gifts. So I let them in, no problem. Come on in. And so they introduce themselves. Obviously, at this point, I'm kind of standoffish a little bit. I'm trying to hold these guys a little bit at arm's length because I really don't know what's going on. I don't know the law, of course. I didn't even know there was a law associated with aircraft accidents. So naturally, I'm holding my care team kind of at bay. I'm very careful on what I say to them. Because naturally, your first inclination or idea is that they're trying to minimize their liability. So naturally, I'm holding them kind of at bay. I don't take anything personal against them. I understand when they tell me they're volunteers. Okay. They're telling me they're going to help me and so forth. That's fine. I have my family here and so forth. Very nice individuals, but I kind of kept them at arm's length. On the third day in the hospital, I decided to go to the accident scene. That's kind of what it looked like here. Went to the accident scene. At that point, when I got to the accident scene, I was able to put a lot of the pieces together of what happened that night. Imagine I was still, when I looked at the accident originally, it was pitch dark. So a lot of times when I was working with lightning flashes, I could see things, But it wasn't until I could see it in the day that I could put a lot of things together and get the magnitude of the accident. On that third day, I also had a meeting with my care team by myself. They asked to meet with me. Am I driving you crazy back there, moving back and forth? So I meet with my care team, and they hand me an envelope. And I'm thinking, oh, it's just a card. So they said to me, here's something from American. We again want to express our sincere condolences about what happened, and we appreciate that you've been nice to us. So I took the envelope back to my room. When I opened the envelope up, I'm sitting here with a check for $25,000. So now I'm really going, well, what's going on here? I am holding my care team at arm's length already. They're like a mile away now. Because now I've got all these questions going through my mind going, are they trying to limit their liability? What's this check for? I don't know anything about the law. I don't know that Congress passed a law with requirements that the airlines have to follow. So naturally, with nobody explaining it to me, it is not helping my relationship with my care team, is it? Okay, I tease my care team members. They tell me, oh, we're going to a briefing. What do I say to them? What? So you can talk about me? So whatever I tell you, you can talk about in your briefing? That's why I'm not telling you the whole story or what actually happened to me. I'll give you little bits and pieces, but nothing that will, cause issues. So, but what was helpful for the care team, on the third day, we took a flight back to Phoenix. So third day after the accident, I got back on board an aircraft. Of course, the care team was very nice. They put me in first class. My mother and stepfather were there also as well. Again, my mom talked so much that I wouldn't let her sit next to me. I let the two care team members sit next to me, and Mom sat behind because I knew what Mom was going to be saying during the whole flight. How do you feel? Are you okay? Who wants to deal with that, right? I mean, having hard enough time just dealing with it individually. I mean, what was scaring me? Landings, right? I was waiting for that first landing. I mean, I was the first landing. I was looking down the center of the aircraft, looking at the attitude of the aircraft, and just like, it was a very tense moment. But I definitely wasn't going to cause more problems by having Mom sit next to me and talking to me at the same time. So I had my two care team members sit next to me. Obviously with my background, flying background, I figured it couldn't happen twice. I'd either be playing the lottery. So when we got back to Phoenix, my two care team members, one of the things that really, really helped out, you want to get your relationship started with your family or your survivor. One of the big things that really helped out was we always scheduled a dinner in the evening. And at those dinners for the first week really helped get the family and the care team together. We learned a lot about each other. It got to the point to where I was no longer holding my care team at arm's length after they explained to me why that got that check. Okay? I understood they were volunteers. I understood they were here to help me. They cooked, cleaned for me, all of the basic needs they did for me during those next 2 weeks. I won't mention the Vegas trip. You guys have to be very, very careful though, okay? Because you will have requests from people that you're assigned to that are outside the bounds of what you can actually do. In my particular case, one of the requests that I made of my care team was, I really didn't want to be in places where there were a lot of people and I wanted to just get out of town. So I mentioned to my care team, hey, let's take a quick trip up to Vegas and back. It's a nice drive. That's outside the bounds, folks. You're putting yourself in a bad situation. As you probably know, in this particular accident, there was a relationship between the care team member and a survivor. You've just put your company at risk. Okay?
Now you're running all you male, female. See two females traveling with the survivor as well as insurance.
And I'm not even a gambling guy. It was just to take the drive up and take the drive back. But you can kind of see what situation that puts yourself in. Okay? Tom probably recognized, and Connie probably recognized this guy up in the left-hand corner. Greg Feith used to be the investigator in charge for the NTSB. He was involved in this particular accident. Let me express a couple things to you. After I got home and my care team finally went home, you know, it's very, very strange for a survivor, once all that attention's gone, to go back into regular life and adjust. One of the things that I did was I went to see a psychiatrist with regards to post-traumatic stress disorder. They'd schedule the appointment for me. When I went, I sat there kind of discussing the accident with the psychiatrist. And at the end of the appointment, the psychiatrist looked at me and looked at her appointment book and said, "When do you want to come back?" Here I was thinking I was going to get a little bit of feedback from my psychiatrist, right? But what I was experiencing. But she said no.